Hi, welcome to another episode of the Ecom Edge. I'm Diane Burley, your host, and this is the first e-commerce podcast focused on how enterprise brands, manufacturers, and teams like yours can be smarter with data, technology, and resources to gain that very important competitive edge. I'm really excited to speak to today's guest, who has had a long and storied career in both media and retail, which comes in handy as he's a confluencer extraordinaire. Of course, I'm talking about Bryan Gildenberg, who is the founder of Confluencer Commerce and managing director of Retail Cities, and now the official third amigo of the CPG Guys, a really entertaining and informative podcast that reveals how how brands can better understand consumers. Welcome, Bryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Diane. How are you doing?
Great. I love the name Confluencer Commerce. How'd you come up with
Yeah,
that?
it goes by confluencer or confluencer. It's one of the one of the great tomato debates. As I decided in trying to convey to people my brainy expertise that I would come up with a brand that was both impossible to spell and impossible to pronounce. So I thought that was a strong play on my part. So
Well, it's a wonderful. I don't know. It's a portmanteau of what? Is it the consumer and influencer, or what two are
no,
you?
actually, where it comes from is sort of two ideas. The first of which is rooted in the word confluence, which is, and in essence, if you the thing that we like to look at is the confluence of sort of three major forces, which is the retail ecosystem, the digital ecosystem, and the omni-channel one, the media ecosystem, both digital and then also increasingly analog media, and then the content ecosystem. So commerce related content, and then sort of all of the content that brands need in order to be able to develop their own brands. So those three things are like, imagine those are like the tectonic forces, like those plates that we learned about in like seventh grade science class that used to be Pangea and were drifting apart. Basically, they're drifting back together again to form Pangea, causing just as much seismic activity as you would imagine inside of a brand or inside of a retailer. But the other idea behind confluence is really sort of two key sort of fundamental phrases, which are around facing the future first with confidence, so that we know where we're going, but also fluency, because so much of navigating these plates coming together is really just around mutual understanding and just different parts of an organization understanding the jargon, the measurement, the frames of reference, the methodologies, and just the vocabulary. I mean, if you've ever sat in a meeting between people that know retail inside of a brand, people that know media, people that know content, they're all really smart people, but they can talk for an hour and not understand each other just because they're using different words. Sometimes the words that they're using mean different things in their different ecosystems, etc. So confidence and fluency are really what we're looking to gain.
I come out of the digital media realm of having put daily papers on the web, so this
Oh,
idea
there
of
you go.
convergence of content and media
Yeah, I
and
wanted to
yeah,
avoid the
that,
word convergence, basically, which I think has been beaten to death.
well, and I think there's something nice about confluence too, because there's supposed to be like a flow, more so than a jam
Yeah,
it in there.
yeah. Usually, confluence isn't applied to tectonic plates because, as I said, they're all drifting apart, not coming together. But it usually describes bodies of water or rivers coming together. I thought that was a pretty good metaphor, and the Amazon's a river, so that always pops. That always
Well, there
pops
you
up.
go. There you go. Now we've tied in everybody and
All my lists is
everything,
perfect.
all your lists. So that begets the question: why did you leave the agency business after all these years to do this? I mean, it's a great idea, but why?
Well, I reached a point in my life where I realized a couple of things. Number one, between my time at Cantor, which and before that was with WPP as the agency I worked for, got acquired by WPP a long time ago, and then my time at Omnicom, I'd spent about 25 years in the advertising holding company ecosystem. That seemed like enough. I mean, that's a lot, and I also realized that that probably wasn't the only major professional experience I ever wanted to have. And I think, secondly, also began to realize that the no one architecture of businesses is really ideally positioned to help a client in totality navigate this problem, or help the leaders of an organization really bring this stuff together. Like everybody, I use this metaphor a lot, but that old thing about, when you blindfold 6 people and have each one of them grab a part of the elephant, you'll be astonished to hear what they think they're holding on to. And I think that no matter which large enterprise you're working with in this ecosystem, no matter how broad its scope is, it's always only got part of the elephant. So I really wanted a chance to kind of see the whole circus a little bit. So, and this is sort of my opportunity to do that. I don't, and also, as I think is not uncommon for people of my rough sort of what I'll loosely call older Gen X demographic, is that you hit a point in your life where you want to chart your own course a little bit more perhaps than you had in the past.
You're going to compete with the dog barking at the UPS guy.
I'm not competing. I'm not competing with it. They always told me, if you're going into the media, never compete with kids and adults. So
talk to me a little bit about this idea. Now, you're not going to be moving far away from media networks, and because so many e-commerce companies now are getting involved with retail media. So your idea of leaving the agency world is not going to be that easy.
No, I'm not. I'm certainly not going to. I'm not leaving my old friends behind. Certainly, you're right in that one of the major areas of confluence is between retail and media. Clearly, as the retailers, particularly in the U.S., though this is a global phenomenon, certainly, but the U.S. is a particularly acute manifestation of that phenomenon for a couple of different reasons, where the U.S. retailers are really looking to become media platforms as well as retail businesses, and to some degree copy the success that Amazon tells people they have in the space. As Amazon cheerfully tells people in their investor calls that they're a $31 billion media company.
Well, they got to have something positive to say, right? AWS and the media company.
Well, if we get a chance, we'll come back to what Amazon means by that, because what Amazon considers media is interesting, right? So that's cool. So you got a number of other retailers trying to do that as well. And then the other thing, of course, is that all the retailers are trying to figure out a new economic model for a world in which they're just responsible for things that cost money that they never used to be. So if you think about it, a brick and mortar retail business has one marvelous efficiency, which is that the last mile is paid for entirely by the consumer, right? So, it would be like mailing somebody a letter, but you paid for the postage. The receiver paid for the postage. Now, with e-commerce, no matter how it manifests itself, the retailers have an incremental cost attached to getting products to people. That's got, other things being equal, a not positive effect on their margins. And they need new streams of revenue, new streams of profit in order to be able to make that work. So I think that's where a lot of the impetus for this has come. And clearly, in combination with the increase in actual market share, as well as what I would call mental headspace dedicated to e-commerce since the pandemic started in 2020. So there's a bunch of different factors that are kind of pushing that along. Yes, but the be all end all of it is that, yes, you do spend a lot of time with talking to media people, but what you very quickly realize, and you grew up in digital media, so you know this, is that the understanding of how large scale retail works in the media ecosystem is not great. And as you seek to become part of building an Amazon media business to some degree, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was just a different problem because Amazon didn't exist, right? So you built that whole thing kind of in isolation. And the way most companies built an Amazon business was, it was kind of, making a gesture, which is wonderful for an audio medium, but it was kind of over there, right? It was in a different part of the company. It kind of lived in its own bubble. If you're trying to build a media platform through Walmart, which for a brand is usually the single most important commercial relationship they have in the world, is the relationship that brand has to Walmart as a corporate entity because of the profitability of the Walmart business for those large brands. Trying to then introduce a media, trying to introduce media spice onto that pretty heavy steak is a different business problem and requires a different level of understanding. And that one right now is where a lot of organizations are really working to try to bring that understanding to life.
So, what are brands trying to do that get involved with retail media? Are they looking for brand activation, or are they looking for that quick sale?
Well, I think historically it was more the latter, right? Like for a couple of different reasons. One, outside of Amazon, up until 2020, let's call it, a lot of the retailers had media offers. Walmart did, Target did, Kroger did in the U.S., but those media offers were largely managed by the teams at the brand that sold things to the retailer. So their concern was all their metrics, and their measure of success is how much of my brand am I selling at Walmart or Target or Kroger. So as a result, they were very concerned with using media to drive conversion because that's what they got paid to do, right? So but now as the retailers' media capabilities have become more sophisticated, as they're able to talk to people that buy media for a living in a more compelling way. And as their off-platform offers become more robust, where I can reach people throughout the marketing funnel, you're seeing retail media start to become a little bit more of a broader funnel or full funnel solution, if you will, so that I'm going after some more traditional upper funnel brand objectives like brand awareness and reach and brand preference, in addition to sales and conversion. It does seem like, given how proximate retail is to conversion, that if you're only running upper funnel things to the retail, it just seems like kind of a wasted opportunity to some degree. And the ability then to integrate a plan so that you've got touch points that drive conversion and that drive the other major benefit of the retail media ecosystem, which is the ability to measure outcomes in a very clear way. The driving to conversion enhances the ability to deliver measured outcomes as well. So I think it's a mix. Certainly you're hearing more conversation, and certainly the retailers themselves, Dan, want to sell the idea that they're a full funnel solution. But there's still, I think, a bias towards using retail media for what retail is good at, which is sell things, right? So
Well, I think, and newspapers found this years ago, and it's one of the reasons why newspapers ended up in so much trouble is that they allowed ad networks to be able to sell just strictly on the click through. So when you're doing that, there is a brand awareness to just having an ad. I remember working with a publisher who said that he wouldn't allow you to put your name on the brand if you weren't willing to pay for the awareness side of it. He said, then we're just going to have like a generic name. This is a electronics company. And he said, you want your logo there? That's brand awareness. Why aren't you paying me for that? So it's interesting. I'm watching this, wondering, and maybe, and you can probably shed a lot more light on it certainly than I, because I'm on the other side of it, watching this, thinking, are they going to make the same mistakes that
no.
media did?
I would say that, with all due respect to my dear friends in the newspaper industry, retailers are way better at making money than newspapers. So no. And then not only in the digital ecosystem, but you're now starting to hear a lot of conversation from the brick and mortar retailers about what's the brand exposure or media value of my in-store network. So when people hear about, we're going to take retail media and move it to in-store, everybody always thinks about either making the store more electronic so that there's screens at the shelf so they can put conventional media assets in there, or, I could take over the TVs in the back of the Walmart and put ads on there, and that's media. But what's really happening, the really interesting piece, is, to your point, how do I assign a CPM value to a merchandising display? So, if 50 million consumers walk by an Oreo end cap at X retailer, that's X number of brand impressions for Oreo. How as the retailer do I and can I monetize that above and beyond how I may already be monetizing it as a merchandising opportunity? So that today right now is a very hot topic of conversation in the retail.
Now, how are brands using content to sell? I know this is another area that you focus on. I was just at an NRF as well, and one of the folks, I think it was for Forever 21, was talking about they had 1,000 influencers building content.
Sure.
How are they using that content? How are you measuring it? And he was saying that's a big problem because unless it's associated with affiliate, that attribution model is difficult.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and it's interesting actually because if you look at some of the moves that Instagram and TikTok have made that de-emphasize straight up commerce within their own ecosystems, right? So Instagram's de-emphasize shopping. TikTok's always found it difficult. And I don't know that those platforms, there's a whole, the way in which you're interacting with content in that platform is not the way in which you shop in most outlets, right? Like you don't, like to me, there's the basic divide in the digital ecosystem really is between things you click through, like Google and Amazon, and things you scroll through, like Instagram and TikTok, right? So the scrolling content feeds are typically most shopping in the world that's objective based is done more like a Google search than an Instagram scroll. So if I'm going to Walmart, right? I'm not in the mode where I'm scrolling Instagram, right? I'm gonna Google Amazon sort of what I would call a vertically integrated sort of content ecosystem. I've got a mission, I've got a purpose, I've got objectives. The funny thing is, what Instagram and TikTok are most like shopping at is TJ Maxx, right? So a shopper really scrolls through TJ Maxx, right? They just kind of wander around, like waiting for the TJ Maxx algorithm to serve them up, sort of, $9 sweaters and cool baskets and stuff. But there aren't that many shopping modes. The overwhelming preponderance of shopping in the world isn't done that way, though TJ Maxx is awesome. The overwhelming preponderance of shopping in the world is done using a different part of your brain than Instagram and TikTok tap into. That being said, I think there's an enormous opportunity. You see a number of companies like this, whether it's Pair Commerce or Hyphen or Micmac. There's a bunch of businesses that are really good at commerce enabling content so that you can basically put varying and different types of checkout ability into your social media feeds, into your Instagram feed. So like my favorite example for years is my old friends at Omnicom built the s'mores campaign for Hershey's every year, right? So you have the chocolate, you got the marshmallows, you got the graham crackers, right? So when you put that on Instagram, it looks awesome. And now all of a sudden, if I want to buy that, historically what I used to have to do was like figure out what retailer had it, et cetera, so on and so forth. And then eventually I could go to the retailer and order it. But even if I go to Amazon for that, I get that in a day. And as you have kids, as you well know, s'mores are, if you're looking to buy s'mores, usually that's because somebody started a fire. The kids say, can we have s'mores? And you realize you're missing one or more parts of the ingredient. You literally have a burning platform at that point. You're the length of the fire to go get the stuff for s'mores before your kids start crying. So what you can do with a lot of these today is you can commerce enable it to find out not just, can I buy this on the retailer's website, but what store is it in? And can I go pick it up in 45 minutes so that by the time I get back, the fire is still going? And that's the sort of commerce enablement you're starting to see, where you take the brand exposure, but add a more mission-centric enabling capability that allows that conversion to happen more effectively. And I think that's where content and commerce come together really well, when you take the engagement skill of a great brand or a great retailer, but marry that with the conversion skill, probably of a third-party partner that simply knows how to get you out of scrolling mode into clicking mode more effectively.
Right. I think that's where you talk about this confluence, this whole idea, because this is a whole digital transformation, right? You have all these different groups of people who know their part very well, and it's bringing that together and creating that giant s'more within an organization where
I never really thought about a s'more as being the embodiment of a confluence product. So thank you.
I was thinking of chocolate in the middle of the afternoon. What can I say?
I will borrow that and credit you for it. That's excellent.
All right, let's get back to, we were talking about Amazon earlier and monetizing and retailers. Yeah. Are they trying to copy Amazon, or what is it that they're trying to copy?
Well, here's the thing. So if you think about how the Amazon media ecosystem grew up, it grew up because of a series of kind of interesting historical accidents. So Google started, and it was search. Nobody really knew what to do with search, so they had experts in it, and eventually it became media, right? And part of that's because Google is sort of an advertising platform, and part of it is because Google owns every other advertising platform in the world, as the FTC has recently pointed out to everybody. So by the way, if you actually want a good read, which sounds the weirdest reading recommendation of all time, but the FTC's complaint against Google, you don't have to read all 149 pages of it because it's repetitive, but the Google's FTC complaint is it's just a really good primer on the digital ecosystem if you've ever been looking for one. But yeah, so you got search, right? So then all of a sudden Amazon crops up, and the primary marketing platform that you're using in Amazon is all search related. It's that's product listing ads, it's sponsored products, it's all the things that are search related. So the media team's like, oh, that's cool, I'll buy that. I get a commission on everything I buy, so I'll aggregate that. And now all of a sudden, you've got a media team doing in Amazon the work that would have been done by a merchandising or sales team on another retailer. Because in essence, I've told this to a million people over the years, but a product listing ad on Amazon that's search driven isn't search marketing the way Google is. It's way more like putting up an end cap in a Kroger than it is like crafting a semiotic response to a Google search. I mean, the actual mechanics of it are way more like in-store merchandising. And the funny thing is with in-store merchandising is it really works. And as a result, media teams on Amazon started seeing astronomically high and fast and traceable returns on the media work they were doing at Amazon. So like, wow, this is awesome. We want to do this everywhere. So now you've got some tension between media agencies and media people that now want to take the Amazon model and replicate that on Walmart or Target because, as you well know, the media business model makes money when it aggregates volume and buys stuff, right? That's how. So they want to do that, but now you're running into people that are like, well, hold on a second. That's not how this ecosystem works. And we already have a huge and complicated relationship with Walmart or Target or Kroger or Dollar General about how we pay for merchandising, what we get back for it, what the returns are. And you get media people showing up in this conversation, just gets really weird. And then the other piece is that Amazon, though they own Whole Foods, isn't really a brick and mortar retailer. The other retailers are predominantly brick and mortar retailers. So if you're trying to build an integrated business plan, the notion of overemphasizing a small piece of it, which is the media component of your e-commerce marketing plan, is just really weird within the context of, I don't know, Pepsi or Coke's relationship with Walmart, which is gigantic and multifaceted.
Don't you have to be a little bit careful too that if you monetize, our company is a search recommendation personalization, and it's looking at 1P and ZP data, look to determine what it is a person's intent. What do they want to see? If you're going to force an ad down them, you risk being a little bit like Google, where the organic search now is 10 buried because they've monetized the whole top of it. Do shoppers like this experience? Because I think you have to weigh that too, don't you?
Of course. And the simple answer is that literally every platform that has ever sold advertising has at some point broken the user experience by putting too much advertising in. So the entire reason HBO exists, because I'm old enough to remember when it started, is because people got sick of watching ads on television. So that's the entire reason cable television grew up, is that it grew up in response to a TV ecosystem that had broken the user experience by selling too many ads.
And now we're going to have ads on Netflix, right?
But I mean, and retailers go through this all the time. The trade-off between a clean user experience and the promotional opportunities that they can in effect sell to the manufacturers that sell to them. Like, God bless it, but walk through CVS sometime and just look at all the shelf tags that are up in a category. There are shelves in CVS where you can't see the product because of all the yellow sale tags hanging down. And that's the same thing. Every advertising platform in the world will over advertise. I think I don't know what that is, but that's like an inexorable, that's like That's like a Newtonian law of physics. And eventually what will happen is either somebody smart comes in and goes, we're breaking the user experience, we need to find a way to stop this, or a competitive platform arises that focuses on the user experience first and advertising second. And basically, if you want to look at the history of the last 3 years in digital media, this is what TikTok did to Instagram. So Instagram became too cluttered, too ad-centric, and the algorithm started taking people away from things that they were interested in seeing. And TikTok came along with a better mousetrap that doesn't work that way.
All right, so we're running a little long on time, but I do want to ask you a couple quick questions about NRF. What was something you saw there that really was fascinating that you think should be on the radar?
I think the most fascinating thing about NRF this year was the lack of fascinating things. But I mean that in the best, as somebody asked me for a quick summary of NRF, I said, I got 4 words: less metaverse, more spreadsheets. And I think a lot of the really cool stuff that I saw, and this is because I'm a dork about stuff like this, was really around the integration of data. And that's really where there are so many things our companies have learned to do in the pandemic, but we haven't wired them together. Like there's no systematic way of doing them at scale in a way where they connect to each other and become more than the sum of some interesting parts.
Are you talking about the different departments within a brand, a retailer, or
Yeah.
are you talking about, okay.
Yeah, the departments, individual initiatives, the inability to link together our merchandising plan and our marketing plans, like all that stuff. I think the most interesting things I saw were just the sheer amount of space and energy dedicated to data integration and workflow integration to enable all of this new cool stuff to actually scale properly. And so that to me was the most reassuring thing I saw at RF anyway. So
You're singing our song here because that's a whole infrastructure play, and that's never considered sexy, but it's important. It's really important with all these different groups. We just finished a tech survey. I wasn't going to bring this up, but we just finished a tech survey where we talked to 610 different tech professionals across very large companies. 79 identified as retailers of companies of 500,000 or more, with 25% of their earnings from revenue. And the number of search initiatives going on within these organizations, and it's to your point. I mean, it's their e-commerce ones, but that wasn't the top of the list. That it's employee portals, it's distributor portals,
yes.
it's all the different communications, convergence that needs to take place, connectivity.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's one of the major barriers to bringing silos together is that different data ecosystems and different platforms, and it manifests itself in the stupidest and most human way possible. But it's like if you ever sit in a meeting with more than one function, and each function is bringing their own data, you'll spend over half the meeting arguing about whose data is right, and that's just that's time you're never getting back. That's basically taking your watch and lighting it on fire. So.
What's the number one thing retailers should look out for 2023?
Oh, geez. Number one thing retailers should look out for. I would say that the single most important thing they need to understand is their shoppers' relationship to the prices they're charging. Because that's all changed so much in the last couple of years. The ability to understand where your shoppers' trade-off points are, what the opportunities are that inflation creates to shift shoppers into more profitable long-term behaviors. The potential for switching that happens when you're out of stock on an item that's at a key tier in your value tiering in your assortment. What should be carried in the store versus what should be carried online because I need things at different value points on the shelf because the shopper's trying to make different decisions and trade-offs. How I price private label versus my national brand, but versus the national brands, as national brand prices in 2023 will be sticky, but in all likelihood, costs will be coming down. There's like a whole bunch of just basic decision economics questions there's about 2 or 3 years of just deeply varied and uncertain shopper behavior in response to out of stocks and rising prices that needs to get codified a little bit better. I think the retailers have a really unique opportunity to win share, to gain shopper loyalty, and to convert shoppers to more profitable behaviors if they're really smart about how they look at this.
Okay, that sounds like a whole nother topic that we should be discussing at another point. But
I
I'm going to have to let you
always leave
go.
them wanting more. That's what they told me.
That's right. That's right. Brian, it's really been terrific having you on. I do hope you'll join us again. Want to thank you, and I want to thank our listeners for joining. And remember to rate and subscribe to the Ecom Edge on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Bye now.